the Honorable Neri Colmenares on a matter of personal and collective privilege.
Will the gentleman from the Bayan Muna, Senior Deputy Minority Leader Neri Colmenares state the nature of the matter on which he is rising?
It is about, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Majority Leader. The collective and personal privilege speech, Mr. Speaker, is about the law passed by Congress on the automated election system, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman has 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The history of the Philippines has been marred by rampant fraud and violence that has gravely endangered the sanctity of the ballot and ultimately our democracy. Other than vote buying and terrorism, elections were marred by massive cheating and other electoral fraud in the counting and canvassing of votes. The election in the 1990s, Mr. Speaker, saw a shift from cheating in the precinct level to vote shaving in the canvassing level through dagdag bawas, where votes in the thousands and even millions were manipulated to distort election results. This is the reason why we in Bayan Muna strongly advocated for the automation of elections in the hope of making precinct elections simpler and easier for the BEI and eliminating dagdag bawas and inordinate delays in the canvassing of votes. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the promise of clean elections in an automated system remains unfulfilled as charges of electronic cheating plague the two automated elections so far as a result of the lack of safeguards in the PCOS machines and the absence of any means by which voters could verify their votes. Worse, election violence, vote buying, and other violations of the election code continue unabated. The chaos that descended on the people in the 2010 and 2013 elections and the signs of electronic cheating continued to haunt the credibility of both electoral exercises. The Center for People Empowerment and Governance, or CENPEG, has conducted credible research to prove that the 2010 and the 2013 elections were marked by telltale signs of electoral fraud. This was compounded, Mr. Speaker, by the fact that, unknown to the Filipino people, the COMELEC has allowed foreigners through Smartmatic and Dominion to control, if not hold hostage, our electoral exercises. Automation through the PCOS system never delivered its promised clean elections, but on the contrary, introduced a foreign-dominated system that violates the principles of secret voting and public counting, as voters remain unaware of how their votes were counted or whether they were counted at all. Worse, the voters were not given the opportunity to object and oppose questionable results, as the PCOS system does not provide such recourse or remedy. Despite the dismal performance of the PCOS machines and Smartmatic, the COMELEC continued to patronize the PCOS system, which is again about to be used in the 2016 elections. Just recently, AES Watch, along with bishops and clean election advocates, have filed a petition before the Supreme Court to void COMELEC Resolution 9922, awarding Smartmatic and TIM a maintenance contract for PCOS machines. This midnight deal allowed the COMELEC to skirt existing procurement laws, even going against the recommendation of its own law department just to favor Smartmatic. The contract just to run an inventory and diagnosis of more than 82,000 PCOS machines will cost our taxpayers more than 300 million pesos, a task that can be easily done by the COMELEC personnel who have handled these machines for the past two elections. In the offing, Mr. Speaker, is another billion peso contract to buy additional 22,000 more PCOS machines, a huge amount, ironically, to fund an electoral system that violates the people's rights to suffrage. One of the major breakdowns in safeguard issues under the Smartmatic regime is the violation of the statutory requirement for credible source code review. The source code is a set of instructions that will dictate how the AES would run, how would the ballots be read, for every specific precinct and in turn prepare the election returns. There was never a disclosure or review of the source code during the 2010 and 2013 elections, marred by an ownership dispute between Dominion and Smartmatic, which held hostage the 2013 elections. This practically means that there was no way for anyone, including the COMELEC, to be assured that no electoral fraud or vote manipulation took place in both elections. One unwanted implication of the PICO system employed is the COMELEC requirement for an early filing of certificates of candidacy, which means that candidates have to file their certificates as early as October 2015 if they wish to participate in the 2016 elections. This results in allowing early campaigning entailing massive expenditures and overspending by candidates to the disadvantage of candidates who lack the resources for a long-drawn campaign period. The lack of war mechanism for the CF cards used for the PICOS machines raises the possibility of modifying the program in these PICOS machines. Without the worm mechanism, CF cards can be altered anytime by any person who has a laptop and a memory card reader that can be bought for as cheap as 150 pesos. This was manifest in 2010 when Smartmatic conducted a last-minute reconfiguration of the CF cards, which admits, Mr. Speaker, to the fact that indeed these CF cards could be changed in the order to manipulate how the PICOS machines would count the ballots. Aside from ballots that are rejected and or jammed by PICOS machines, the system employed did not verify the authenticity of the ballot fed into it, since the ultraviolet ink detection mechanism was purposely disabled in both elections. The voter-verified paper audit trail, a mandatory requirement under the law in order for voters to know how their votes were counted, was again purposely disabled in both elections. The PICOS has no mechanism that ensures that the transmission of results is secured and tamper-proof. This was compounded by the fact that election returns and certificates of canvass were not digitally signed and was not proved to be transmitted in secure networks, making it vulnerable to electronic interception. There has been a report made by the DOST before the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee for the AES regarding the appearance of lines in the scanned images of the ballot that could have affected the manner the PICOS reads the votes in the ballots. These vertical lines appeared in the digital decrypted images of the physical ballots that were scanned by PICOS machines on election day. Some of these digital lines ran over unshaded ovals in the digital ballots, causing PICOS machines to detect these ovals as shaded ones that could either add to a candidate's vote count or subtract from it when overvoting arises. These are clear violations, Mr. Speaker, of the sanctity of the ballot and the principle of secret voting and public counting. In short, a complete disregard of our right to suffrage. Additionally, the existing PICOS system does not provide for an accessible procedure on electoral protest, as the counting and canvassing are done by the machine, leaving both the voters and the candidates at the mercy of Smartmatic and its unverified source code. To date, many developed nations such as Germany, Netherlands, and Japan have started to abandon the use of electronic voting machines and reverted back to manual election system, as it has only cast more doubts instead of guaranteeing the sanctity of the votes. In 2009, Germany's Federal Constitutional Court ruled electronic voting unconstitutional on the ground that, quote-unquote, a citizen must be able to examine all the essential steps and the results of the election without any specialist knowledge. Since the current automated system violates our right to suffrage, we need to find an alternative. A better alternative would be a system called automated canvassing election system that manually counts votes at the precinct level but uses automation in the canvassing level. This system still electronically transmits the result of canvassing centers but allows for verification and validation of canvass results because the voters and the candidates have a record of the votes in the precinct level. This system employs manual voting and counting at the precinct level while consolidating all these votes electronically through transparently prepared election returns. Concerns about a foreign company running our elections is dissipated because the system is technology agnostic. Parts and computers are locally available and the system can be easily learned by our BEIs without encountering the problem that the PICOs faced. The use of privately owned election technology may facilitate a quick count of election results, but private automation technology becomes untrustworthy because of its nature as a private property immune to public scrutiny. Unlike the current PICO system, ACES not only allows for the verification of votes, but allows the Filipino people to wrest control of our elections from foreigners. The main problem in the manual elections before was the delay and the massive dagdag bawas in the canvassing stage and not so much on the precinct level. This alternative system, therefore, addresses the main problem in the canvassing stage without sacrificing the very important verification procedure in the precinct level. In closing, Mr. Speaker, the 2016 presidential elections is an important election in a critical period, and the country may descend into chaos if the same election breakdown and lack of credibility will hound the presidential race, especially if the vote difference is small. We cannot allow a foreign-controlled technology which does not allow the people the opportunity to verify their votes and the remedy to oppose electoral fraud once again trample on our right to suffrage. Changing the PICO system is an imperative if we wish to exercise our right to suffrage effectively. And that change is needed now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Colmenares, the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of the Honorable Colmenares to the Committee on Rules.
Any objection to the motion? The Chair hears none. The speech of the Honorable Colmenares is referred to the Committee on Rules.